Well, this list is certainly long overdue. I mean, aside from Fire Emblem, Monster Hunter is the series that gets the most views and discussion on my channel, so I really should have made this list sooner. Well, better late than never, as they say. So let's turn our attention back to Monster Hunter, and seeing as the last video I did was the 10 best subspecies, naturally the next step will be to look at the 10 worst subspecies, or in this case, least favourite. I mentioned in the last Monster Hunter video that subspecies were very hit or miss, and while there are quite a few hits out there are also just as many misses. These subspecies do nothing to help their original versions and just come off as cheap, lazy, dull and downright pathetic, and there are 10 in particular that I have placed on the chopping board, so join me everyone, as it's time to retrace our steps and relive those memories for all the wrong reasons, as I count down my top 10 least favourite Monster Hunter subspecies. Just a few things to establish first and foremost. 1, this is just my opinion, and if you just so happen to like these subspecies, that's fine, you're free to like them. 2, I'm only looking at monsters featured in 3 and 4 Ultimate, Generations doesn't have subspecies, as well as the ones that I've actually faced. 3, I'm looking at least favourite subspecies, not worst, and in my eyes, a bad subspecies is a monster that either does nothing different from the original, or takes what I find to be a weaker aspect of the original and makes them even worse, but it doesn't mean the monster itself is bad, just its subspecies. And 4, I'm probably going to mispronounce the names again, just throwing that out there. And with all that cleared up, what say we once again look at the worst that the Monster Hunter series has to offer, and when subspecies are involved, we are literally sinking to a whole new level. Green NARGACUGA. Well, if it isn't this bad boy again. Okay, in all fairness, the NARGACUGA has grown on me, and it's not as bad as I made it out to be in the least favourite monsters video, but that doesn't change the fact that I feel the green NARGACUGA is a rather weak excuse for a subspecies, especially when compared to its other sub or rare species, the lucent NARGACUGA. I guess you can't win them all. Like most bad subspecies, the green NARGACUGA has no new attacks, no new element to it, and it even has the same weaknesses, so already it's not off to a good start. However, to this thing's credit, because of its more violent nature, it will use its more powerful and fancy attacks more often, so at the very least it's not just the same thing on repeat. Additionally, the green NARGACUGA will always do a double tail slam and it is guaranteed to stun you, so make sure you're careful. All these combine to make fighting this version much more exciting, but also much more frustrating, since its speed, matched with its aggression and sometimes hard to dodge moves, makes this a monster that will literally give you no breathing room, but that's more down to the hunter rather than the monster. While certainly not the worst, the green NARGACUGA isn't exactly good either. Though its fighting pattern differs to the original, everything else is essentially the same, and the result is a rather meh subspecies, and it only gets worse from here. Duramboros. Duramboros, you are one of my favourite monsters introduced in the 3rd generation. It's a shame your subspecies isn't exactly stellar. I mean, to be fair, you certainly look cool, but outside of that, there really isn't much different about you. Which isn't terrible since you're an awesome monster regardless, but come on buddy, a bit of variety would be nice. It is the spice of life after all. As the name suggests, the Duramboros has a more, well, rusted look to it, and I do have to admit it's very cool looking, along with having an axe-like tail. Despite being visually interesting, the monster is otherwise the same as the original, which is a real shame since you'd think with its tail resembling more of an axe shape, it would have 1 or 2 new attacks up its sleeve, or at the very least have a more aggressive fighting style. However, sadly that's not the case, and we're stuck with a Duramboros who looks like he's been out in the sun too long. I guess the last thing to mention is that this version is weak to water and ice instead of fire, which is something I guess, but it's a marginal difference at best. And in the end, we're stuck with a monster that looks awesome and is still awesome to fight, but it's essentially just wearing a new coat of paint. Talk about style over substance. Brute Tigrex. So it seems yet another one of my least favourite monsters has a crappy subspecies. Who'd have thought? Much like the NARGACUGA, while the rare species is good, in fact it made my best list, the other subspecies isn't so stellar. While the Brute Tigrex doesn't suffer from being the exact same as the original, it instead takes some of the most annoying aspects of the original and makes it much worse. And considering I'm not a fan of the Tigrex to begin with, you can pretty much guess the rest. As the name suggests, the Brute Tigrex is a much angrier and more aggressive version than the original, so prepare for more long stretches of this thing chasing you down, tail whips, pouncing and roar attacks. Speaking of which, that's the one advantage this subspecies has, as it now has a roar attack that sends out a huge shockwave that both hits hard and has a wide spread, so be sure to be quick on your feet or else not even earplugs will save you. The Brute Tigrex also has a new colour scheme, which to be honest I don't care for, and is now weak to water. So overall, it does have some noticeable differences. However, in my eyes, they only exemplify the worst aspects of the Tigrex and make this monster even more annoying and frustrating to fight. Granted, that's purely down to personal experience since there are a large number of Tigrex fans out there, but to me, all this subspecies does is reinforce why I don't like this thing. Though definitely not as lazy as other subspecies we'll see, the brute Tigrex isn't exactly doing any favours in regards to winning me over. Less is more, as they say. Less is more. Black GRAVIOS. The Black GRAVIOS is an interesting one, since this monster does have some differences to the original, and it looks much cooler, so you think this would be one of the better subspecies. While yes, there is certainly merit to this thing, like the brute Tigrex, it takes one of the most annoying aspects about the original and makes it much worse, which in my opinion does make the fight more engaging, but the frustration is real with this thing. The original GRAVIOS has a reputation for being a monster that is very dull, very slow, and also very annoying to fight because of the high health and its heat exhaustion. Well, you'll be glad to know that the Black GRAVIOS isn't nearly as slow or dull to fight because of its different fighting style, as this version is not only larger, but it is more aggressive and has better control over its fire attacks. The only downside is that now you have to put up with being bombarded with flamethrowers and a constant amount of hot air coming out of this thing. This is pretty much the major difference between the two, since the Black GRAVIOS will use many powerful fire attacks that, while not too difficult to dodge, do deal a lot of damage and will cause this thing to hit you with burning hot gas if you get too close. While fighting this thing is more fun, and to be honest I kinda prefer this version, I can't ignore the fact that the gas and fire attacks just add to how drawn out this fight can be, only now there's a much higher chance of you dying, and as far as subspecies go, I guess you could see this thing as both a blessing and also a curse. Plum Diamo Hermitar. I'm pretty sure I pronounced that name incorrectly, but once again one of my least favourite monsters has a crappy subspecies. Something tells me this isn't the last we're gonna see of this trope. The Plum Diamo Hermitar suffers mostly from being just a recall of the original, and while it may have one or two slightly different attacks, they're nothing special, and the result is very much second verse, same as the first with this thing. Much like the Rostyrambros, the only noticeable difference with this subspecies is the visual one, having a purple or indigo look to it, and sprouting a Diablos shell instead of a Monoblos one. Though to be fair, I think the Diablos shell looks cooler. Aside from that, it's pretty much the exact same thing. It has the same behaviour pattern, it has the same attacks, same weaknesses, though this one is weak to ice as well, same everything really. You'd think with a different shell it would change its fighting style to reflect its new home. In this case it would be more offensive and put those horns to good use, but apparently the developers never thought of that, and thus, we get in my opinion, the 6th worst subspecies in the Monster Hunter series. I know this part was short, but honestly there's not much else to say about this thing, and I'd rather not drag this video out longer than necessary. God knows I'm already guilty of that. Ruby BASARIOS. You know, it's pretty bad when the subspecies of a monster that is already very similar to another one is not much different from the original version. Man, Capcom, you sure are fans of the phrase copy and paste, aren't you? Nevertheless, the Ruby BASARIOS, while certainly more visually interesting than the original, and has maybe one new attack, is pretty much just the BASARIOS with a few bells and whistles attached, only these bells and whistles aren't exactly producing a pleasant sound. The Ruby BASARIOS, as the name suggests, is a BASARIOS with rubies embedded in its skin. Not exactly the most exciting subspecies, and well, yeah, this thing really isn't very exciting. I mean, to be fair, it's able to launch crystals from its back as an attack, which is something, but honestly that's about it, and everything else is pretty much the same as the normal BASARIOS, which is already very similar to the GRAVIOS. In terms of its actual design, this is probably as lazy as you can get with a subspecies, since all they did was stick crystals on it and nothing else. They didn't even change the overall colour scheme to reflect a more ruby hue, which baffles me since it's called the Ruby BASARIOS. Thanks to this lack of trying, the Ruby BASARIOS is one of the most boring and forgettable subspecies ever. Sure, it's not the worst, but honestly that's not saying much since it's still pretty lame, and no amount of crystal shards are going to change that. Purple GYPCEROS. I told you this wouldn't be the last time we saw one of my least favourite monsters having a crappy subspecies, and while the Purple GYPCEROS is most certainly a crappy subspecies. You know how the GYPCEROS is one of the most annoying and tedious monsters to fight? Well, the Purple GYPCEROS is even more annoying and tedious to fight because of this one difference between it and the original, and even then it's still one of the laziest subspecies in the series. Just how do you even manage something like that? I think we sunk to a new low, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't guessed by now, the Purple GYPCEROS is able to produce a more deadly poison compared to the original, which will make fighting this thing harder, and to be honest, it does kinda need to be. Plus, it is also more resilient and less prone to flinching and falling over, so credit given where credit is due. Too bad the rest falls flat on its face. Why, you may ask? Well, first of all, the colour scheme is rather boring since it's just purple with a bit of green and nothing more. No other attacks were added, it has the same weaknesses, and because it's more resilient, this thing will use its poison and flash attacks a lot. Oh joy. Honestly, I don't even know why this thing is a subspecies. The only real difference I can see is with the poison. In this case, why didn't you just give it to the high rank version? They did the same thing with the Giganox, so why not this thing? Yeah, I'm actually praising the Giganox this thing is so bad. Once again, Monster Hunter proves that simply buffing a monster isn't the best option, and while I think we can all agree that a buffed up GYPCEROS is not a good thing. Green PLESIOTH. Oh yes, you all saw this one coming. It's pretty much a fact at this point that next to no one likes the PLESIOTH, and the subspecies is one of the laziest subspecies ever. It doesn't make the monster any better, the changes are so minor that it seems pointless, and even the way it looks isn't very different, so it makes me wonder what was the point of this thing in the first place? Well, I guess Capcom had to fill out the roster somehow. The green PLESIOTH is a green version of the regular PLESIOTH. And that's it. No, seriously, that's the subspecies. Nothing, and I mean nothing, about this version is different aside from the colour scheme, and even then it's not even that noticeable. Everything down to its behaviour, its weaknesses, its elemental attacks, even the places you find it are the exact same. I mean, my god, I thought the purple GYPCEROS was unnecessary, but this is just ridiculous, and in no way is this monster any better than the original. In fact, this thing is worse, since there's actually one very minor change, and it's that this version is more proficient with water attacks, which means you have to deal with more high pressured annoyance, along with everything else bad about this monster, and yes, that includes the hip check. At this point, we've reached the bottom of the barrel with these subspecies, and with only 3 more to go, they must be something special to be worse than this fish, and yes, I said 3 for a reason. Black Diablos and White Monoblos. Some of you might be raising an eyebrow as to why there are 2 monsters sharing the spot. Well, allow me to explain. First of all, to me, both the Diablos and the Monoblos are already very similar monsters, so I'm fine with them sharing the spot. And second, both of these subspecies are literally nothing more than blatant recolors. Everything from their attacks and behaviour is exactly the same, and this is one of the worst things a subspecies can be, so in my eyes, both of them are just as bad as each other. I'm not making this up or exaggerating when I said they are one and the same. Literally, the only difference between them is how they look. There's no new attacks, no new elements, no new behaviour patterns, nothing. While this is bad enough, with a name like Black Diablos and White Monoblos, I feel these versions could have easily been different and for the better. White Monoblos makes me think of an ice version that is more about defense and has harder armor, whereas Black Diablos makes me think of something volcano based and is even more aggressive than the original. These two, like a lot of other subspecies, just feel lazy, and it's a shame because I like these monsters, and a twist on them with a unique subspecies could have made for something really cool. But nope, Capcom just took their textures and set the exposure levels to either minimum or maximum. In fact, the only reason these monsters aren't at number 1 is because they're pretty cool looking. I mean, come on, the Black Diablos looks fucking awesome, so I have to give them points for that. Which is more than I can say for the final entry on this list. Get ready, people, because we're about to see the creme de la creme of crab of the Monster Hunter subspecies. So without further ado, here's the number 1 entry. Red KHEZU. Just why? Seriously, Capcom, did you even bother with this thing? I mean, the KHEZU is already a very unpopular monster, even though I don't think it's as bad as everyone makes it out to be, so you'd think a subspecies could do something to make it better considering how low the bar has been set. But nope, you literally sprayed it red and called it a day, making no changes and adding nothing to this already underwhelming beast. Capcom, I love you, but things like this are shining examples of just how lazy companies in the gaming industry can get. As I pointed out, the Red KHEZU is a KHEZU that is red skin instead of grey. And that's all there is to it. Thank you all for joining me, I'll see you next time. Okay, I'm not going to end it there, but honestly there's nothing else to say about this monster because there's literally nothing else different. This already makes it one of the worst subspecies, but what puts it at number 1 is not only is the new look not very appealing, but also that they didn't even attempt to make this thing different, and I feel like this is a massive missed opportunity. I don't know about the rest of you, but when I think of a Red KHEZU and look at this thing, I see a monster that is more aggressive than normal, a monster that uses more physical attacks, a monster that perhaps has a different element like fire, a monster that can no longer stick to ceilings but instead fly temporarily and use aerial attacks, anything but this! At the end of the day, the Red KHEZU is just pathetic. This monster represents not only the worst the subspecies have to offer, but also the extent of the developer's laziness, and I have nothing but the highest respect for Capcom, but in regards to the Red KHEZU, there is no respect you deserve for this abomination. This has been BlazingKnight. I wish you all a great night, take care, and even though I love Monster Hunter and most of the subspecies, they can't all be winners, and these 10 are shining examples of that. But what do all of you think? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Did I miss out any subspecies? Let me know in the comments below. In the meantime, be sure to check out my top 10 best Monster Hunter subspecies video. Also, don't forget to check out my Let's Play channel Blaze Plays, where I'm currently playing through Fire Emblem 6, The Binding Blade. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at BlazingKnight. Also, don't forget to follow me on Amino to see posts and lists not featured on my channel, or just have a friendly chat with me. Anyway, that's it from me. I'll see you all next time.